Before I really get into it, please stick around towards the end of the video. I will be unboxing the physical limited edition that'll be coming. It released not that long ago at the time of this video releasing, but January 26th is its full release date. Please show it support. I think that wasn't accounted in a recent release for sales on Mahotsukai no Yoru. So if you haven't bought it yet, or if you did buy it, it will still show as like the good sales they're looking for in the West here. Visual novels might be the single least accessible medium of entertainment that you see anime sort of based on. They're on the whole a really hard sell, and while some people might point to light novels as taking that title, I think there's something to say about having a gaming controller in hand or reading with a mouse and keyboard that just makes it hard for most people to separate, well, reading from just playing a video game. Our first instincts for gamers is to feel put off by the lack of gameplay. I'd say in the history of gaming, the closest we've had for a visual novel to go mainstream might be Ace Attorney, Professor Layton, and Persona, but the prior two of those are closer to point-and-click adventures than visual novels, and the latter one just has an entire RPG game that comes with a dating sim. I think in visual novel circles, there's a lot of passion behind them. Fate Stay Night alone holds a lot of prestige, so in recent years, that circle has become able to sustain a community that will buy the translations. But for the longest time, Type Moon seemed reluctant to release their visual novels here in the West. At least until today's topic, Mahotsukai no Yoru, or Witch on the Holy Night. I was actually a bit surprised in 2022 when they announced it was going to release here. I had sworn I would show it as much support as I financially could, as this is a rare opportunity to really show how viable the West is as a market for Type Moon works. Thing is, I kind of have to admit, one thing did have me worried. Even I had trouble with visual novels in the past. Perhaps I've just never given them enough of a chance, but the gamer brain in me always seems to fight with the concept of playing them. Which is really odd because I'm actually a huge fan of story in my video games. I'm not some monkey-brained like the Connor dog of the voice actor. But something about them just meant that I could never finish them. And then on top of that, Mihoyo is probably the single most visual novel to ever exist. There are no choices, no bad endings, nothing. From beginning to end, it's a book. A large, high-budget picture book with a soundtrack attached to it. Before reading, the question remained quite constant in my mind. Will I even finish this thing? Well, the spoiler alert here, absolutely. So, here we are, something like 30 hours after me picking it up. Honestly, this is probably the best Type Moon work I've experienced so far. For me, it was even better than Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night, which were previously far and away my favorite Type Moon works. The characters just seemed to have so much relatability and charm to them while having much more somber themes that complemented hilarious moments. As I brought up before, I didn't know how I'd feel about this. The thing didn't have any choices in it at all. From the outside in, it probably looks like a picture book, and yeah, it's an animated picture book. But that's actually okay. It didn't need to distract from any of its moments, to be honest. The first side of this are the action scenes. The action moments here were just outstanding. More hype than things I've seen in some fully animated series, actually. It was rather minimal, which helped every moment of action feel like a monumental shift in the story or in a character arc, something you just don't get from the more action-heavy Fate series, where it feels like there's a fight very, very often in any given series you have. I know I'm overgeneralizing here, please don't attack me. I love Fate, you know it. But here, every moment just feels like it matters on a character level. On another note, there's the slice of life scenes, which are honestly just as important. I'd start reading, and before I knew it, 3 hours had passed, and the chapter was mostly just characters talking about making tea or cleaning or getting dinner. But those small conversations build sort of like a music piece, playing you through the different character arcs within this visual novel. If I can identify any critiques at all here that might irk someone. It's that by the end you get the sense that nobody in this story is really a villain. In some ways, it's kind of like an T.H.E, where things just kind of happen to characters in a scenario. That actually describes every single anime series and visual novel and manga to ever exist. Yeah, that's a little bit of a weird... I guess the best way I can explain it is that it doesn't feel like these moments need to string together too much. While there is an overarching plot, as things occur, they matter more for the characters than they do for any overarching story. Even when you get to the end with the big bad of the visual novel, you might be raising your eyebrow just asking yourself if that was it. It's not bad. I certainly didn't have a problem with it, but I can see someone struggling a bit with that story element. I guess I also might say that if you asked me what the plot of this story was, I probably couldn't answer it beyond a general setup. I guess it's also worth mentioning before I get into any sort of discussion on the full story itself that the gameplay is non-existent until a side story chapter, at which point it's a fun novelty, but can be a little annoying. I'll mention it a bit more later, but if you're a blind player, maybe pull out a guide if you aren't the type that wants to hunt these things for bad endings, as the bad ending isn't really worth getting and just kind of kills the pacing of your reading experience. Okay, so how about that story? The story is largely split up, I'd say, into two arcs. The first arc is focused on setting up the different characters and spent bouncing back and forth between Aoko and Sojiro's perspectives. Aoko being a mage in Type Moon, and Sojiro being a young mountain boy who lived far away from developing civilization in Japan. Sojiro one day witnesses Aoko using magecraft, and the majority of this arc is spent on how Aoko feels about Sojiro and deciding whether or not to kill him, because he's seen the magical world. The climax of the arc ends up taking nearly a third of it, though. And honestly, holy crap, that scene might be the single biggest thing making me excited for the ufotable animation of it. I think I'm setting myself up for disappointment, though, as how do you even animate something like that? Like, you have to see it to really get how grandiose it is, but it's also very, and this is the case for a lot of the visual novel, very perspective-based. Fingers crossed ufotable can do it. The second half is a little bit less focused on any specific plot. Sojiro ends up living with Aoko as her roommate, along with another character named Alice, who is also a mage, and he spends the majority of the plot trying to endear himself to Alice. So, she doesn't kill him, and end the chance for him to spill their secret magecraft shit in the entire world. This is the bulk of the visual novel right here, and is almost all slice of life. We get implications over the course of this arc that something is coming, and the climax is also pretty good. I don't want to say it was perfect. A few things came with a little build-up, but, I like the main characters, and the new stuff introduced was fun enough. It's also got some really beautiful moments that you really do need to see for yourself in order to fully comprehend it. Then the story just kind of ends. It's actually kind of unsatisfying. It doesn't really tie up all the loose ends and only resolves the plot thread of the previous arc that was built up over the game, here and there. It is fairly low-key, and you get the idea that it's not the end of the story, mostly because it's not. For those that don't know, Mihoyo is a part 1 of 3. All 3 parts are based off of a novel that Nasu wrote that ultimately went unpublished. He took the first third or so of that narrative and turned it into the visual novel, promising the rest would eventually release as Mihoyo 2 and 3. 12 years later, the fanbase is still waiting, thanks to Nasu's involvement with FGO and the Tsukuhime. With both projects nearly done, the hope is there that he will return to this series, especially since it seems like it sold pretty well for a visual novel, thanks to a worldwide release. Then, in the post-credits, there is a final twist that, although subtle, is effective in characterizing Alice, so I highly recommend you stick around to watch for that. But that's not the end. We do get a couple epilogue chapters and gag skits. The epilogue chapters are actually part of an optional content library. You can miss this stuff if you don't check the archive between chapters, so you might want to do yourself a favor. It is more slice of life, but it's really good. I do encourage you read through it, and honestly, my favorite character in this entire visual novel is in that section. It really only gets characterized there, so please read it. But for the epilogue themselves, one is a chapter written showing what the villain was up to mid-story. It's cute and a treat for anyone that's a fan of that character. The second epilogue is 1 year later, and is a story set presumably either just before, after, or during the events you'd see during the MiHoYo 2 time. Honestly, we can't really say since we don't know much about MiHoYo 2, but it follows one of the side characters through a murder mystery that goes wild due to magecraft. I guess now is the best time to say this is the part where the options enter the gameplay, and it's interesting. On one hand, it's nifty to see MiHoYo playing with bad endings and dead ends and giving the player choices. On the other hand, the way the chapter uses these elements might seem a little cheap with how the system is set up. The entire thing is about a 2 or 3 hour affair if you read from start to end, so I recommend reading and playing normally the first time without sweating your decisions, and then on second playthrough to get the good ending, look up a guide and speed through anything not new, or you can just look up a guide to begin with. Either way, it just depends on your perspective on guides, but this does not feel like it's worth it to read 2 or 3 times, or even 4 times over just to get the best ending. For anyone curious about what my thoughts were chapter to chapter, I'll be posting my writings on that in a Google Doc for you guys to see. It'll either be in the description of this video or in the comments section. It'll be there sometime after this video goes up. Feel free to check them out if they're up by then. I'll put a mention in the community tab the moment they're up, I promise. So all in all, coming out of this, I think I now understand some of the frustration in the T.H.E fanbase. For the longest time, I swear I'd hear stuff like complaining about the lack of MiHoYo 2 and its overshadowing by Fate Grand Order. This work was just so beautiful to read, and it feels like the passion that Nasu had comes in so many different ways. I cannot recommend this enough, and now find myself intrigued to how they are going to approach this with the movie adaptation. In some ways, it has sparked my own creativity again, and in a way that only my favorite works ever seem to do. While I might not fully agree with the frustration a lot of the fanbase has, given how to even get this in English, FGO had to succeed, I now feel like this is the moment where we can see some real movement in T.H.E Moon. Between this and the Tsukuhime remake, it feels like T.H.E Moon is content to let the franchise move on in directions other than Fate. I'll be curious to see where these things end up in many years' time. That was the end of the video originally. That's where my script originally would have ended. But literally a couple days before I planned to film this thing, Nasu dropped a bit of a bomb in an interview with 4Gamer. And it's definitely something. For years now, MiHoYo 2 has been thrown around as something that Nasu wants to do, but it's behind Tsukuhime remake and FGO as a priority. That is well known. But in this interview, Nasu shares some of his doubts on the use of a visual novel medium to deliver that story. There's a lot he says, but ultimately it comes down to a perspective of lowering market viability, at least for visual novels. He says that Tsukuhime and the re-release of MiHoYo being done in such quick succession was meant to gauge how well visual novels can still do in today's markets. He throws around the idea that MiHoYo 2 may be a video medium, not clarifying if that means an anime, movies, or whatever that's supposed to mean. My gut reaction is, Nasu, no! And even he acknowledges that visual novels are simply the best medium to give slice-of-life content. I don't know if this is 100% true, as there are plenty of slice-of-life manga and light novels that exist that do similar things to T.H.E Moon, where they weave in and out of focus storylines for slice-of-life content, but I definitely share a sentiment that MiHoYo itself benefits from being a visual novel experience in a way that probably wouldn't be the case in any other medium. That middle ground of being a video game and a book is quite helpful in crafting something that just shows its passion as much as MiHoYo does. But on the other hand, I have to ask if he's actually wrong. At the start of my review, before ever even playing MiHoYo, I called into question whether or not visual novels could appeal to a wide audience. I had no idea of this interview when I wrote that. Whether a choiceless visual novel is even worth making is honestly a question in itself. Nasu makes no secret to enjoying gaming, and I think that if he had the budget, Fate, Tsukuhime, Mihoyo, all of these stories would be made into fully fleshed out games. He's even talked about trying to make Tsukuhime 2 eventually as an open world city game, not unlike, say, Spider-Man PS4, Yakuza, Grand Theft Auto. But he's also, at heart, a storyteller, and the amount of compromises that need to be made for a video game are harsh. Generally, in games, you need an excuse to enter combat or change scenery frequently, or else you risk players becoming bored. Let me remind you that Mihoyo's re-release has few enough action scenes that I can probably count them on two hands. One, if I'm being less generous about what constitutes multiple action scenes. That's not conducive to a video game. If it was, then maybe it could be released that way and have wider market appeal, but obviously Nasu isn't going to go that route because he recognizes the value in the quieter moments of his storytelling. So one might push him to remain with visual novels. But this doesn't solve the huge issue. He's right. No matter how much I enjoyed Witch on the Holy Night, there is very little mass market appeal to visual novels. As Type Moon's budget gets bigger and bigger, I think there is more pressure on Nasu. He is their top bill writer, hands down. If his name's on a project, all Type Moon fans pay attention. You don't see this for any of Type Moon's other talent, except for maybe Urabuchi, who's just a guest author. So imagine how much money they are losing using him to write visual novels, which will never sell as well as a video game, a light novel, a manga, or an anime. Hell, visual novels have small enough market appeal that they took ages to translate One for the West, when they literally translated every adaptation of them otherwise. But I can't help but recognize that something would truly be lost with this strategy. Say he releases it as an anime, the most likely option to preserve slice-of-life content in video format. I'm just not confident he'd be able to capture the charm of his writing original content for anime. He's only done this once before to my knowledge, and it's possibly one of the most controversial Fate works out there, Fate Extra Last Encore. Nasu apparently, instead of writing the anime, wrote an entire light novel and handed it to the staff to adapt. It ended up with pacing issues, characters that didn't feel fleshed out, action scenes that felt oversimplified, and all of these things paint a picture of content being written for a novel. Internal or narrator-driven monologues probably fix the character issues. The pacing could have come from Nasu not really writing the series for TV length and not getting approved for a longer series. And the action scenes in a novel can be much simpler if they are character-driven, which the original novel likely was. What I worry about is that if Witch of the Holy Night gets an anime adaptation, and the fans don't get the material it's based on, and don't get to have their discourse and speak their mind about it, the producers won't be able to see exactly what they love about it going into it. And that would only result in a product that is deeply unsatisfying. I worry that's the road we are in danger of walking towards by trying to make the continuation of Mihoyo anime based. Before I continue, I'll say this. Please, people, buy Mihoyo if you want to send a message to Type Moon that visual novels are worth being kept around. I may seem doom and gloom analyzing the situation as visual novels being too niche of a medium, but if you think it should be otherwise, then do your own part. At first, this was about Type Moon localization, but now it very well might be a matter of the continued use of visual novels as a medium for Type Moon. With that out of the way, if Nasu does end up moving to this anime format, I don't think all is lost. I can think of maybe one way this could work. One simple approach Nasu needs to take to avoid ruining what he has in a change of medium. After the Mihoyo movie adaptation, focus on a slice of life anime. Don't pull any plot in if you can help it. Make it a weird, quirky slice of life anime where two goofballs and Alice live in a mansion and occasionally get into weird hijinks because of magic. Please keep it mostly heartwarming. Any character melodrama should be saved for the last 2 or 3 episodes of the season, or hinted at subtly earlier on, or just kept out for the occasional release of a movie that can cover more heavy story topics. Just show these characters growing. I know Nasu has 2 major stories in him for this thing, so it could be 2 seasons max and maybe 2 more movies. So a viewer could go movie, season, movie, season, movie, and get a generally preserved experience. The only thing that would be lost would presumably be the slice of life elements from the visual novel, which sucks, but we have those in the visual novel format already, at least. For anime onlys, I don't know, maybe you can get an OVA or something. If MiHoYo has to be an anime, that in my mind is the only workable scenario. Then again, I don't know. I really don't know Nasu's remaining story. Maybe it just doesn't fit that format at all. But if it remains like the visual novel, that is my hope for it. My biggest reserve here is that Ufotable is not known for their long-running slice-of-life shows. Though it is possible. In fact, I'd love to see it since Ufotable usually only does action. Emiya Gohan notwithstanding. But we already know the MiHoYo anime project is with them. So it would take a rather interesting turn in their production to see this happen. This really turned into its own mini video essay, didn't it? God forbid news at the New Year's stream gets announced and I have to completely rewrite this or make it longer, but I think the writing has been on the wall for a while. Think about how the only thing that was publicly cancelled about Girls' Work was the visual novel, for those of you that remember Girls' Work. Think about how long the Tsukuhime remake took to come out. Mostly writing as a passion project off the back of FGO's budget. Think of how MiHoYo 2 never came out. It might not even be entirely FGO's fault here when you're looking at these. Sure, they tied up Nasu, but it's possible that what had him push back those priorities was wavering confidence in visual novels. Change really sucks, and honestly, capitalism driving moves from the older, simpler times it really fucking sucks. Alright, so yeah, in case you couldn't tell, the original review is based off the version I bought on the Nintendo Switch. I actually ended up, because I wanted to support this game as much as possible, I bought it twice. Once for the Nintendo Switch and once for the PS4. So yeah, and because it was the only version you can actually buy online, I ended up buying the physical edition of the physical special edition here. Now that's interesting. I wonder if this is a defect, because this is the right way up here. I turn it around and it's completely upside down. Also, it's a little bit torn here, but that doesn't look like it was pulled out. I think it might have just been handling. I hope it doesn't damage anything in there. We'll see, though. But yeah, I actually like the box here. It's got all the artwork on the back. I assume the case will look like this as well. Alright, I guess I'm going to switch over and start recording from a top-down view. A little easier for you guys to see the product. So, yeah, editor NikNak's going to have to cut this part. Alright, so here we go. We have the box here. I'm just going to pull it out. Pull it up. Get the plastic wrap off of it. I've just degraded its value by 10 times here. Now it slides up like this. That's why I think it might have just been boxed wrong. Yeah, it looks like it probably should have been boxed like this. Tell me if anyone else is boxed like that too, because it should have probably been boxed like this as opposed to this way around. Even inside here you can see the this. Now, it looks like here it comes with some sort of art book. I think I saw something on this. So yeah, here's the game. And what's this? I'll check out the art book here in a second. The boy leads a completely ordinary life. She carries herself with gallant pride. The girl lives a sleepy, hidden life. Each walks a starlit path. One would never expect their paths to cross. The story of how these three disparate people came together is soon to be told. I might have done this in reverse. In the mansion on the hill, there lived two witches, and it is the late 1980s, the twilight of an era of beauty and vigor. The boy... Fuck, I have it positioned like that. You guys couldn't see that. You'd probably see it better like this. So this is the back half. A boy moves city, barely missing two witches living in modern times. The backside has a little blurbs as well. That's interesting. Oh, there's something in the box here. Let the heartbeat of rebirth sound. Witnesses a young woman unseals the magic blue. I'm not going to spoil what that means in Type Moon, but Type Moon Fate fans are going to know exactly what's going on there, since it's been pretty well thrown around in other Fate and Type Moon media. Alright, so I guess we'll open up the game here first. Ooh, the disc is a little loose. I have that occasionally at the games, but we'll see in a second if it's damaged or not. I'm just telling you guys right now, this was late because of Amazon. If you ordered like from Target, you're probably fine. So, yeah, rip Amazon. I haven't liked using them in a while, but this is the one I could do right now. The disc was loose. Let's see here. But it appears to be undamaged. I've seen it like this. They usually aren't damaged that badly. And yeah, the inside here has some fun artwork. That said, I'm sure we'll get it with this here. Now, this, what I believe is an art book, Magician's Basic Tune, is much bigger than I thought it would be. I did not expect to see it be this big. Now, I probably shouldn't show you guys this in great detail just because I don't know what Aniplex would do to me. But it's nifty to have an official art book. I've only really got the 2 FGO materials I showed off on my Fate Haul video, and then I've also got a Xenoblade art book that I like to flip through. So let's take a look at this. See how it compares to those. So just some CGs here. There are spoilers in here, by the way, just as it warned here. So if you haven't played the game and are maybe just looking to see what you're just watching this review blind, I would maybe cut off here. We'll see you next time. There's nothing left of this video. Skip to my outro if you want to click some links. But otherwise, I just want to take a quick look at this, because the opening pages here don't appear to be too spoilery. Let's see. Oh, that's Now this is the part where I find out I'm going to have to censor the video, apparently. Okay, that's some interesting information. They gave him stats. Do they have my boy in here? For those of you that watch, oh yes, yes, they have my boy. My boy is in here. And they have the different art layouts here. Is that? You never get a really good look at it, so it's interesting that you get to see the Thames troll. Yeah, this is really good. Oh, wow. What in the world? So I can't read this out loud, but it looks like there's something in here called the Honey Adventure. Now, I didn't remember seeing this advertised if it was. Wow. But it appears to be about 30 pages of like a 30-page short story here. So apparently, if you're a Type Moon fan, you have you have an officially translated little short story you can read through here. I'm going to read through this on my own. Maybe I'll do a quick little short review on that at some point, if it's worth reading at all. But I see Sojiro's name mentioned in there, so you never know. That it looks like this looks important right here. I am going to have to read through that. I'm glad I actually opened this up on stream. I did not know that was there. All right, then. Yeah, I think that's all. So yeah, just in case you want to get another look at the full thing boxed again, I'll go ahead and re-put this together. Put it together the right way up, I think? No, I was about to put it together the wrong way up. So yeah, I thought I jokingly mentioned this. You probably won't see an off-the-shelf or anything like that for a visual novel like this, just because Seki's not the visual novel sort of person, as far as I can tell. Bugger, maybe she'll cave and read this, but otherwise, yeah, no, I think this is about it for Mahotsukai no Yoru or Witch on the Holy Night, as long as this is all we get, except for maybe that short story. I will review that, or I'll read that. Maybe it's something interesting I can summarize on YouTube for y'all. Maybe. We'll see. I'd never heard of that. So yeah, we'll see you next time. I don't know what's coming out tomorrow. I don't know where Editor Seki is or what our schedule looks like. So you'll have to keep an eye out, but we are supposed to have a video up tomorrow. And I guess later today, I'm actually recording this 2 days earlier than I thought I'd be. No, 3 days earlier, actually. So you might see a stream up from me later today as well if I get this up on Tuesday the 14th. If Seki doesn't have something going up as well. But yeah, I guess we'll see you next time, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye.